Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have 4 different off-meta decks and leaders that I've been kind of working on and playtesting on my Twitch streams for the last couple weeks. And if you guys aren't following me on Twitch, I highly recommend doing so. We do a lot of content out there, a lot of tournaments, a lot of gameplay, a lot of testing, and just really good OP04 content. So hope you guys can follow me over there, and also follow me here on YouTube and hit that subscribe and like button if you haven't already. Put a lot of content out for One Piece, and there will be continuing, especially with the regional in the next couple weeks as well. But going on into this video, again, we have 4 different leaders we want to kind of talk about. And none of these are, again, very competitive on the surface, but they kind of originated as like, what if this kind of weird synergy worked out, and what if I tried it and it did better than expected, which is kind of neat. So we're going to start off with Iceburg, which I think a lot of people, including myself, depending on the day, kind of write off as kind of a kind of joke leader in a lot of ways. It's a purple 5k, and it says this leader can't attack, which is kind of rough for it, but there's also have this activate main Dawn -1. You may rest this leader to play up to 1 character with the gallery look company type with a cost of 5 or less from your hand. So it is kind of like a mixed bag of like, man, that effect is really good for Dawn -1. You get to play a 5 cost, which is silly. But when you look at the card pool for the 5 cost, there are some good cards, but they're just kind of okay. I think okay is kind of where we go from it. For this build specifically, we chose 4 copies of Lucci, 4 copies of Polly, which this card I think is getting a little bit better as time goes on. The fact that, you know, you could technically play it for only 2, like you use the Dawn minus effect, but then you get the Dawn back with this guy if you pay 2. So I think that's kind of nice for it, and you get the Dawn back as active, and also just 2 copies of Kaku as well to kind of round it out as 10. This one's okay. It can put some pressure, but I think Lucci being able to rest something with cost of 5 or less is just a little bit better outright. So that's kind of the cards we want from there. We also do have like the stage here, which, you know, gives us extra Dawn every turn, so kind of facilitates our Dawn -1 effects. And just kind of go from there. And so we decided to use the Baroque's work package, since we do have the Miss Valentine. This card does not like have any restrictions for it. It also can find itself, which is really interesting, which I think is great for like the searcher. So you won't have to kind of like we don't have to put more Baroque works for make this card to like not miss as much, which is nice. You can hit off our life too if we need to. And in general, what I kind of found out with this leader is that we just really need more bodies on the board for attacks, just because we lose out on our leader attack. That's kind of important, but also the fact that we want to be able to build our board and have your opponent like have nowhere to attack but ourselves, which is really good. So I think all of that kind of works together in itself. So the Baroque work cards that we add, we have Miss All Sunday, which is very good for us too. The fact that this can ramp and draw for us is a double hit, and the fact that it can hit off our life, that you just get a lot of value from it, which I think is very nice. We also have Mr. 4, which I think this card is okay. If you don't like this card, which I've kind of been, again, like okay with, you can sub it in for just like another copy of Miss Valentine, another Miss All Sunday. It did some work, but the fact that and like it does become like a 7k blocker for free ish, and just everything else. Also, the Dawn -1 effect is not once per turn. If you swing with this and they attack into it, you can still do the plus 1k power for Dawn -1, which is quite nice. But then also the Mr. 5, which again, I thought this card was a bit of a joke card too, but I did find a lot of use for it in the deck. The fact that you can just end your turn with it active, and then you can use the Dawn -2 effect. It does have to rest itself. It just means that if your opponent wants to attack into anything, they have to attack into your leader first. And the fact that this removal from this card is actually okay in the right circumstances. So I felt like this one was like an okay boss monster for an archetype. The fact that it's searchable off Miss Valentine is fantastic, and like you don't really mind the -2 effect in this deck because like this is the highest cost card for us. So all of that felt okay, and I played this deck a little bit. The only thing that I really feel like this deck is missing is like a really good like 5 cost gallery that lets you just have a blocker. I think that's the only thing. Like if we're able to set up like a 5k 5-drop blocker for free for Dawn -1, I think this deck is in action, but without it, you're kind of missing a little bit. And just the fact like we don't really have like an actual boss monster is kind of rough for the deck too. So we do have a new blocker in Iceburg though. We can play it for 1, and you have to Dawn -1, but just the fact that it is a blocker that your opponent has to do something about, it's nice. And you also have the Yokozuna. You can, if you don't like this one as much, you can just go like 4 copies of the 1-drop Iceburg, but I think just having a blocker out potentially, even if it's just like this weak one that they can get rid of pretty easily, is better. It just means that your opponent has to answer it somehow. So, but Yokozuna as well, being able to potentially do a block and bounce something back to hand, just means that you get to get some tempo with it too. And it's a water 7, which means it's searchable off of our Kokoro. So in general, this deck felt okay. I think that you maybe could expand on it a little bit and maybe find some more cards or things that work with the synergies for it. But I found it was better than I expected. And if you guys are bored or want a deck to mess around with, I think this one has some potential as well. So here is the Iceburg list, and then next up we have the Yamato list. And you guys, some people might be insulted by me calling this deck a little bit off meta, but I think this build specifically is a weirder one that I have been finding some success with. So I want to just kind of go over it. This one, you're kind of playing it as kind of like a more white beard centric in a lot of ways, and the reason I say that is because we really don't care about taking our own cards out of our life. We want to go down to a low life total, and we get rewarded with it in a couple ways. So first, we do play like the biggest card that I don't run, I think, is the Espira 3-drop, and the reason we're not running it is because it is kind of dead in hand. Sometimes, I mean, it does get like the on KO, but since there's a lot of ways to mitigate that more often right now, I didn't find it as useful. And we're trying out these new 4-drop Luffy and 3-drop Luffy and 3-drop Sanji. Both of these are promos, but the Luffy, when attacking, you may add the top card or bottom card from your life to your hand up to one of your characters, and leaders gain plus 1k for the turn. So he becomes a 5k, and your leader becomes a 6k for the turn. Then there's also the Sanji of when your life, if you have 2 or less, this becomes a plus 2k. So for 1 Dawn, this becomes a 7k swing, which is actually pretty substantial too. So the fact that like the Sanji being able to be like a pretty big attack, and this Luffy being able to take cards from your own life is pretty valuable for us too. So kind of like the idea is that we want to go down to like low life totals. We want to be able to take advantage of that too. Smoothie is the same thing. It just gives the plus 2k to itself, but it's great, and it's a trigger off of life, which was good too. And the reason we want to be at low life totals is because we want to be able to proc our Yamato effect at being at 1 or less life, and also being able to proc this Yamato's effect by being at a 6k leader too. So that's kind of like the idea for it. You just build a lot of tempo. You attack your opponent a lot. We're playing the 4-cost Katakuri as well, being able to look at the top card of our life and being able to put that to the bottom. If we see that the top card of our life is like a beige or the 4-drop Sanji or the Brulee, like we have 10 cards that could be. Putting it to the bottom is fantastic. It just means like we can be very aggressive, very greedy, and we know that the bottom card of our life is going to save us another turn potentially. So I think that's something that's really strong. I almost want to bump this up to 4, but being able to have like 10 of these disruption cards that we have a really good chance of either naturally being towards the bottom of our life or actively putting it to the bottom of our life is very strong too. So that's kind of the thing. I did run Thunderbolt for a little bit. I think that's okay. The top end is kind of manageable. If you don't like 7-drop Charlotte Linlin, definitely put a 4-drop Katakuri, and you can put either the 8-drop down to 2 copies. Yamato, I think, is like a 3 or 4 of. The fact it's not searchable is kind of rough, but it is kind of what it is, and just generic good yellow stuff. So that's kind of this list. I have been finding some success with it, and I think it's kind of more unique than just having it be kind of a Katakuri build without Big Mom. That a lot of people put in, and I think that's fair for a build, and I think that's very strong too. But this one's a little bit different, and I kind of want to just show a different build for people who are maybe kind of locked into one way to build this one. So there we go there. Next up we have Arlong, and this is my copy. Like you do kind of have, again, like the standard, like put the good Big Mom cards into Arlong and go off with it. But I've been having some fun with this build, which is the version with Arlong and like the Wano County cards. So I think that is fair to kind of mention this build and kind of show my success for it. I honestly think that probably the Big Mom version is maybe a little bit better, but I do want to just say, like, the synergies that we just have, like this Momo that's able to search our cards, it's good enough to kind of mention. And I do actually kind of like this 5-drop Yamato in the deck too, since we have so many ways to to rest our opponent's cards. So we can use like our Arlong, we can use this effect to attack. We can play the Karubi from our hand, rest the blocker they have, and then our Yamato can be a double attack banish if we need to, right? We have the 5/7 Yamato is great. We have the 4-drop Yamato, which again, kind of like the same thing as the other deck. We can take advantage of Smoothie being able to be a 7k attack, put us down to 1, and then we play Yamato to heal it back up and then potentially get rid of a blocker or something. So I think that's good. Ozuki being able to just be a Wano Country or Land of Wano, which again, I don't think I've mentioned this, but Wano Country and Land of Wano are functionally the same. So Momo's able to find Land of Wano cards. If that's wrong, let me know, but that's literally what I've been told by everyone. So if that's wrong, I just don't use this deck. Check the comments, but I don't think that's incorrect. I think that's how that's ruled for this card game right now. But being able to, like, the trigger effect for this one's okay, but the fact that we are able to play it for free off for Arlong is fine for that as well. And then also, like, the Jin being able to rest 2 things because we have an East Blue leader is kind of invaluable. Hotchan being able to 2k that also we can trigger out of our life to play for free if we need to have another body from there. And then Paradise Waterfall, it's kind of a toss-up between Paradise Waterfall and Arrow. I like Paradise Waterfall because of Sanji, so we can attack with it, and then we can, Paradise Waterfall restand it if your opponent's like attacking elsewhere, and you can get some value from there. Or even if you need something, like if you need to protect like your Charlotte Cracker, or if you need to protect like something else, like even like your Yamato, and they can't, if you attack with it and they get out of it and they want to try to attack into your Yamato, you can Paradise Waterfall, get out of it, and then they have to attack your, somewhere else, which is strong too. So I think that's good. I think there's a lot of good synergies with this deck too, and just kind of how the archetype works out. I wish there were more kind of like trigger cards that are Land of Wano outside of like the yellow Yamato deck does have some of them, but there could be some, like, honestly just better ones. So, but that's the list here for Arlong. And then to wrap it up, we have this kind of janky but kind of cute version of Rob Lucci. Again, if you didn't notice, these are kind of cuter builds that I've been working on, but I've won games with these decks. I promise I've won games with each one of these decks. I would not be putting them up here in case if I didn't have like a smidge of confidence in them. So we've seen this a little bit, but this is kind of running the Stassi build. And here's the thing with this, and this is something that you'll see in a lot of it depends on like the deck you're playing against. And I'll clearly say out front, like, I think this build is probably not very good against Newgate itself. I think that's probably one of the harder matchups, but the fact that we are able to kind of establish a lot of like card advantage on the board and be able to be kind of obnoxious with some value, it means that like one of, like, I'd say the harder matchups for a lot of decks are Zora, right? So even if you play Stassi for 2 and there's nothing that gets out of it, the fact that this can trade into 1-drops that Zora attacked with earlier is very good. Sure, it can be hit by Marco as well, but at the other hand, like, there's a lot of targets for this card in the deck. I wish it could find itself. I don't know. I guess it would be what? You could play it, and then you'd find Stassi, and then you could play the Stassi and the other one. So you could get comboed out. So I guess that's why it isn't. But we do have one, we can play Spandam. So being able to play Stassi to fly Spandam means we have a 1-drop, a 2-drop out, and then we're also able to look at cards. So like we don't lose it. Jerry, which is, even though it's just a 4K, it's good value that you can get into the board. And then also Wanzi, which can be good and also is good like late game if you need just to do like an emergency restand, and like if they have like a 1-drop that's hanging out for the rest of the game, play this, discard a card, pop the 1-drop, you can restand your Rob Lucci and go off with the deck. So I think this deck has some, like, it's really, really tempo based, which is also why we're playing Air Door, and you can do some, crazy stuff. We're playing Jabra at 3 copies, which you can get off the Air Door. So being able to get a 5/7 out early does a lot of damage, I think, and gets a lot of tempo your way as well. Obviously, Kaku is like one of the best targets for it as well. Being able to play it and then assume it, like, you almost always hit it, and then you're able to use the effect to pop something, usually what your opponent played the last turn, which is great, and just kind of everything else. So nothing too crazy. 6 King Pistol, if you like Shockwave, go for it. I like this card a little bit more for this one. And then kind of our top end, Sakazuki, since we're playing so much tempo, it's kind of hard to ignore how much good tempo, like being able to play this, be a 7K and get rid of essentially anything your opponent played last turn is great. And then Isho to kind of help stabilize some damage there too. So we're not playing Borsellino in it. We are playing Bart because we are a little bit short on deck space for it, but being able to be a blocker in general or a 2K and be the flexibility for it, I think is strong enough as well. But this build. It's a little bit more tempo, a little bit more kind of aggressive than I think more Rob Lucci's, but it does kind of work out. If your opponent can't really answer a lot of this kind of tempo and aggression that we have early, we can kind of just steamroll to the end there too, especially since, again, like we are technically a dual attack leader and blockers don't work as well against us at the end game, which again, I think a lot of decks are trying to block her up and we can kind of get around that, which is really nice. So anyways, these are all four of the lists I've been kind of tinkering with and working with. They're not, I'd say, good enough to make a video all by themselves, but I hope I gave you guys some ideas, some stuff to look at, and maybe some decks to try out in the next couple of weeks too. So that's going to be it for me. Let me know some other kind of off meta or off like just weirder decks that you guys have been working with and maybe finding some success with, and maybe I can test it out on my stream as well. So follow me on YouTube, follow me on Twitch, and that's going to be it for me. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.